Hi everybody, Scott Frankowski here, Head West Photos. Today I want to talk about taking photos of the Great Conjunction, where Jupiter and Saturn appear to us on Earth here as close as they can possibly be to one another. Today on December 21st, 2020, they will be at that Great Conjunction. They will look as if they're a single point in the sky. First, I want to just show you an app I've been using called Photo Pills. Not in any way sponsored by them or anything. But this is the app that I've been using to make sure I know that my camera settings are going to be decently correct for what I'm shooting, which in this case, 2 planets and the moon, really, because the moon has appeared in a lot of these shots. So I'll bring up the Photo Pills app here, and they have this great feature in here called Spot Stars. So if I click on that, and this is like a $10 download from the App Store, so it's probably the best $10 you'll spend as a photographer. So you put your camera info in there. It has most every camera, I believe, and then it asks you what millimeter focal length you're shooting at. And for a lot of these, I was shooting full out at 180 millimeters on my Tamron 70 to 180 lens. So as far out as I could go that I have available with the lenses I have. So I can put 180 in here, and there's a couple different focal lengths I've used, but we'll go with the maximum. And what this will tell me then is how long I can hold the shutter open. So that's going to be important. What I've been trying to do on a lot of these shots is to get the foreground with the planets included. So I want I don't need the shutter open long to get the planets because they're so bright in the sky. But I do want to maximize the length of time I can hold the shutter open to get the foreground in the composition. So then this tells me, and I'll set my aperture. For a lot of these, I use an aperture of 4. So the lens will do an aperture of 2.8, but I stopped it down just a little bit to try and get a sharper image. This basically tells me, so it gives you the 500 rule. Take 500 and divide it by your focal length will give you the amount of time that you can have the shutter open before you start seeing the planets trail there. But it also has this other rule that takes into consideration your camera. And this says specifically like the megapixels of your camera. And this says I can spend less than a second with that shutter open at 180 millimeters before I'll start seeing trails in my images, which I really want to avoid. I want clean images because Jupiter has moons with the little 4 Galilean moons. Not little, they're actually very large moons, but they appear very small from so far away. And I don't want those really streaking or anything in the image. So I've been pretty much going with this NPF rule here. So let's take a look at my images here in Lightroom. I'll show you pictures I took on different days here. Like I said, I was really trying to keep the foreground in the pictures. I think that kind of grounds the pictures, gives you some reference point. If you want the best photos of Jupiter and Saturn together, you're going to use a telescope. Like, yeah, I don't have a telescope, and it's not really what I was going for photographically. You can, I mean, anyone can take those pictures through a telescope. Not anyone. That's, you know, that's a skill set as well. But to me, I was going for interesting pictures, including the foreground and other elements. So we see here, this first one, I got the moon in here. So this was a few days back. This was on, let me see, December 15th and the time's not right on my camera. It's actually 2 hours behind because of time change and time zone difference. So this was taken at 6 p.m. Mountain time, so just after sunset, still during blue hour. 6 p.m. on December 15th, so a few days ago. And you see here, I'm using this one I was using the Tamron 28 to 75, all the way out at 75, and I was really trying to get the moon plus Jupiter and Saturn in the picture, plus the foreground. So really trying to get a lot into a single image. I love how this one came out though, 75 millimeters. This one I had wide open at 2.8 for 1.6 seconds. So going to my app here. So at 75 millimeters at f2.8 gives me 1.42 seconds. So I exceed that just by a little bit. 1.42 seconds that I can use on this on the Sony A7R IV that I'm shooting with. So I love how the moon looks there. Moon is setting. And zoom in here. Wait for it to load. It's a bit noisy. But this is a huge image as well. This is the full 61 megapixel. No crop on this image, or maybe I cropped it down just a little bit. So you can see it's a bit noisy. I'm at ISO 2500, so it is introducing some noise there. But I really like that other star showed up. I see Jupiter and Saturn plainly here, but if I zoom in, I do see some star trails. So that 1.6 seconds, it could be a number of things going on here. It could be that the shutter was just open slightly too long. It could also be that the Saturn and Jupiter are way kind of at the edge of the sensor, so there might be some coma going on there where the edges get a little bit pulled around the center. And based on the direction, it looks like they are kind of getting pulled around the center of the lens. So not ideal. The positive aspect of this is that when it's zoomed out, they actually look bigger, so you get more of them in the sky. But zooming in, you can see those trails. So I mean, reasonably though, I could print this one at, definitely an 8x10, probably up from there, put it on a bit bigger sheet, and it would look totally fine. This camera has so many megapixels that you'd have to really print big to see for this to be too much of an issue on the print. So I like that image. Very similar one here. This might have been the same day. Let me just get the meta information here. December 15th. Yeah, so this was the same day, just a little bit different color compositions going on here. ISO 5000, so brought the ISO a bit more up at 1.3 seconds, so brought that down a bit. So now I should have I still see. So it must be the placement on the sensor with the given lens that's creating some coma there, or maybe just a little lens shake or something's going on to make the planets there go. It might just be my focus too. Now looking at the rest of this image, so I'm not going to get detail on the moon. See, I'm thinking it might be a focus issue here. Going into detail on this hill here in the foreground. Yeah, I think I might just be slightly out of focus on this image. I definitely do manual focus for all of these images, but I don't know. I screwed that up some way or another. But I do like the colors. I do like the moon is setting, and I got Jupiter and Saturn close together in the image there. So going on to the next night, this image is cool. I like this one. I like that it kind of worked out. So look at my ISO here. I'm at 16,000 ISO, 180 millimeters, f3.5. So I stopped down just a bit, and only for 1/4 of a second. So I only wanted to keep that shutter open because I was zoomed all the way out to the horizon. Here, the moon is, I mean, if you're just looking at not through a telescopic lens, that moon basically looked like it was on top of the horizon. So real close to the horizon. Huge ISO. I wouldn't usually go this high, but I wanted to keep that shutter speed as fast as I possibly could. So 1/4 of a second. Zooming in on this image, yeah, you can see the noise there, and I did apply some noise reduction. But you can still see details in the moon. Zooming in on the planets. Yeah, they don't necessarily look, I mean, planets at this focal length are just going to look like splotches of light. But you can see the moons here of Jupiter, Europa, and Io up here. I looked at the Night Sky app that I have on my phone that will tell you the placement of different planets. So Europa being the ice planet, basically one big ocean covered in ice. Io being very volcanic planet. It's pulled by Jupiter, its crust is pulled, and it just kind of keeps it in the state of being heated up constantly and releasing that in volcanoes. And if we zoom in on Saturn here, you can see Saturn just as a splotch, and we can even see the moon Titan here, a possible candidate for life in our solar system. Methane atmosphere there. Very cold planet, but has some of the ingredients that may make methane-based lives possible. So it's really cool that even showed up as a little splotch of light in this image. So huge ISO just to keep the shutter speed low. But overall, I mean, there's not much detail. I won't print this one too large. I'd probably stick as an 8x10. I think as an 8x10, this image could look pretty cool. Next image, I went a bit wider here. So I pulled out the, what was this? The 28-75 Tamron 2.8. I stopped it down a little bit to f5. Held the shutter open for just under half a second at base ISO of 100. So that base ISO gives you a pretty clean image. So here I wanted to keep the foreground in it because this is El Paso, Texas here. We got this lovely kind of mountainous desert mountains. Great sunsets here, so you can see kind of the last of the blue hour sun. What time was this shot at? This was December 17th, so a couple days later at what time did I shoot this at? So this was at 5:30, 2 hours before the actual capture time, 5:30. So the sun had set at 5 o'clock, so this was just after sunset here. So you still got some natural light in the sky. So the moon and the planets appear pretty small in this image, but I mean, it's going for more of an overall composition, getting the sunset light, the mountains of Juarez, Mexico in the background, Mount, what is this called? Mount Cristo Rey, I believe, here in Sunland Park, New Mexico, and just some of the west side of El Paso here. And you can see I like the moon looks cool. That's a waxing crescent, but you can still see the outline of the full moon. There's enough light in the sky reflecting off the earth that it does light up the moon just a little bit. That's pretty cool that the earth light is lighting up the moon there. And then you can see little splotches. It's too light out at this point. The only things you could really see in the sky with the naked eye were the moon and really Jupiter and maybe Saturn. Couldn't see their moons at all at this point, so they just appear as these bright splotches. So I mean, these kind of get lost in the image because it's a wider angle at 35 millimeters. Moon looks cool. It looks pretty small though in the image too, but overall I just like the cityscape and the desert mountains, and still having those astronomical elements in the picture. Going to the next picture, December 17th again, 5:47, so a little bit later, 47 minutes or so after sunset, 1 second at f5.0, 70 millimeters. Okay, so I zoomed in a bit more here, and I think I brought out, this is probably the low end of my 70 to 180 lens. Yeah, it's a 70 to 180 lens I'm using here. And still, again, so wanting to include these foreground elements. That was what I was going for in these photographs, to include foreground elements so you kind of see the astronomical event happening in relation to the Earth. And again, we see the moon. I have to go into develop here. We see the moon. Focus maybe just a bit off, but not too bad. I mean, the brightness of the moon really drowns out the shadowed aspect. So the light here is reflected off the Earth back onto the moon, whereas the bright part is being lit up by the sun. So it's such a range here in how much light there is between what's in shadow and what's being lit up by the sun. And then finally, this was taken last night on, let me go to my library here. So I really like the shots with the moon in it. To me, that's where it's at. Those are awesome. Jupiter and Saturn by themselves, unless you have a telescope, it doesn't look that great in the camera. They're so tiny. So you need to put them against some sort of foreground. You need other elements in a photo. If you just see them, I guess, cropped with just the planets, it's not a good photo, I think. Then you're just showing the planets magnified a little bit. To me, that's not cool. So I was really trying to go for interesting compositions. The moon helps out a lot because it's so much bigger in the sky, so you can kind of place it in a composition and it works out well. The planets by themselves, but by this date, yesterday, December 20th, the moon was so far, there's no way to get the moon in the image with the planets. The moon would have been way up, kind of in the center of the sky. So I was just could only get the planets here. Jupiter on the bottom, Saturn up top. Looking out, this is at 180 millimeters, ISO 4000, holding the shutter open for 1 second, f.4. I really like this picture. This turned out well. So I got just the houses down below my in-laws' house here, looking out over the west side of El Paso. See some interesting like Christmas lights on houses. To me, that's pretty cool. Zooming in on the planets themselves, you can really see all the, I didn't look to see which moons they were, but you can see the moons, you can see Saturn. These are real close together. So tonight, the 21st, these are even going to be like even closer together. Probably half this distance, if not like almost right on top of each other, which may look cool. But yeah, this image turned out well. So I think tonight what I'm going to try to do is to use probably a pretty small aperture to try and get some get some of those nice kind of spikes coming out from the light, and see if I can place it right near the horizon and get some cool, I don't know, starburst effects going on. We'll see if it works. It's cloudy, so I don't No, usually it's kind of cloudy in the morning a lot of times here, and then the sun kind of burns off the clouds. So I would guess there's probably 60 to 70% chance tonight here in El Paso, Texas, that it will be a clear night and I'll be able to take some shot. So we'll see. I'll probably go for a similar composition to this. I'll probably take down the aperture to f11, f8, f11. I don't want to boost the ISO too much more, but I gotta get light from somewhere. But maybe we'll try to hold it open for 2 seconds or so. Again, the app is telling me I gotta keep it about under a second to avoid the trails, but I guess I'd be more concerned about getting something that looks cool rather than trying to avoid the planets trailing at all. I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal as long as it looks kind of cool with some composition. I might go, I was pretty up high here on the balcony of the house. I might go down to the patio. It's still above these houses, but probably about 20 feet lower. And just go for a different composition than I had for this picture, just to try something else with it. I could go to some other locations here in El Paso. I think this one works though. I do like the West Side Park Hill here in the picture. It just adds something interesting. I like kind of the rows of city streets. Those lights kind of work for me. So we'll see what I come up with tonight. So yeah, that's all I have for this video. If you like the content, please subscribe, leave a comment, let me know how you're trying to get photos of the Great Conjunction, or if it's cloudy there and you're just trying to see what other people are doing, whatever the case may be. All right, everybody, take care.